everyone, and welcome back to another video on the channel. And in today's video we'll be going through my round 16 AFL tips and predictions, and as well as that we'll be recapping round 15 to see how I did last week in my tipping. Obviously last week there was no video for the tips, so I'll be running you through who I tipped last week. Before we get into the video, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like if you haven't already, and we'll get straight into the video. So for round 15 I got a total of only 4 out of 9 tips correct, not the greatest. Started off on the Thursday night, I did tip Melbourne to bounce back against Brisbane, and that's exactly what they did at the MCG. I tipped them to get it done by 27. Now I thought 27 was going to be a big margin considering Melbourne haven't been too great over the past few weeks, but it's a pretty small margin compared to the actual difference between the two sides. It was a 64-point margin. I tipped them by 27, got the tip correct, and I was 37 points off. So Melbourne finally getting a bounce back win after losing 3 in a row. Obviously they had 3 losses in a row, all at their home venue as well. So they had 3 losses in a row, all at the MCG. It was Freo, then Sydney, and then also against the Pies. And they had a break with the bye, and they came back and destroyed Brisbane by 64. Then we moved on to Friday. We had a doubleheader on the Friday night. We had the Dogs take on Hawthorn at Marvel Stadium, and it was a massive win for the Dogs, and I did in fact tip Hawthorn, unfortunately. Hawthorn controlled the footy really well early in the game. In the first quarter they dominated, but ever since quarter time the Dogs were just on top of the Hawks, and they ended up getting it done by a heavy margin. I didn't know how good the Dogs actually were. I feel like I've been underestimating the Dogs. They're sitting currently in 8th position, and I felt like Hawthorn, they've been in some close games this year, and I felt like this one was just going to favour them a little bit more. Felt like it was going to be a bit of an upset with the tip, however no, got it incorrect, and the Dogs just ran all over the Hawks. And then later on the Friday it was 8:40 PM bounce down between the West Coast Eagles and the Essendon Football Club, and I did in fact tip Essendon. It's really disappointing, really poor, but that's a respectable one to get incorrect. You know, West Coast, they're sitting second last on the table with a percentage of 55.8. They just overtook North. Their second win of the season against the Bombers. The Bombers are sitting 16th, so it really isn't anything to be proud of for the West Coast Eagles. I think they went on like an 11 or 12 round losing streak, and then they finally broke the streak against Essendon on Friday night. I did tip the Bombers, and they unfortunately weren't able to get it done, and they were defeated by 10 points. Then we moved on to the Saturday games. It was Carlton and Fremantle at Marvel Stadium. Obviously, being a Freo fan, very disappointed. Went to this game. There was a match day vlog out, so if you're interested in what goes on at the actual footy inside the stands, then go make sure to give that a watch. However, did tip Freo. I tipped against Freo a few weeks ago when we bet the Ds, and ever since then I'm never tipping against Freo again, because I thought no chance we beat the Ds at the MCG, but we got it done comfortably by 6 goals. So never again I will be tipping against the Dockers, and we just got pretty much manhandled the whole game. 31 points final margin towards the Blues. The Blues move up to 5th position and still just don't have the percentage to overtake the Dockers. Brisbane and also Geelong are all in the same amount of points, so there are 5 teams fighting for that top 4 finish. The top 4 is up for grabs for anyone. However, yeah, disappointing result for the Dockers. Next game, it was an absolute thriller game of the week. It was the Cats and the Tigers at the MCG. 4:35, I tipped Richmond, and considering that they were down by nearly 40 points, I think it was, in that second term, considering how they only lost by a 3-point margin, I feel like the tip wasn't actually that bad compared to what it looks like, and Richmond were in front. I assume you guys all know what happened. There was 2 minutes left, Richmond scored a goal, went back in front, then the Cats straight from the stoppage went down to their 50 and scored a goal to put them in front with a minute to go, Jack Henry. Then on the Saturday night it was Sydney and St Kilda, and I did tip the Swans to get it done by 50, and they got it done by 51. So the Saints only scored a total of 32 points, and just a really poor night for the Saints, and one to forget for them as well. Moving on to the Sunday games now, we had North Melbourne and Adelaide at BLUNDSTONE. I did tip the Crows against North. I thought it was going to be a bit of a 50-50 matchup, but Jesus Christ, I did not know how bad North were. They are appalling. They are a really bad side. I really didn't know that they were that bad. Crows ran all over them and got it done by a 57-point gap. I did tip the Crows to get this done. I thought, yeah, as I said before, it was going to be a pretty even matchup. However, no. Adelaide took home the Chockies really comfortably. Next game on the Sunday, it was Collingwood and GWS at the MCG. And Collingwood had a pretty solid, handy lead in, well, for majority of the game pretty much. And the Giants just couldn't execute the opportunities well inside their 50. They had the opportunities there in the last term. They just weren't able to execute well. And the Pies got it done by 11 points, which is good for my tip. and probably not too great for the top 8 in regards of Freo, but I feel like there's still that gap in between Freo and Collingwood at the moment. The last game on the Sunday, it was a thriller at Adelaide Oval. Once again, Gold Coast had so many opportunities in that last term against Port at Adelaide Oval, and they just couldn't seem to execute well. They had it inside their 50 so much for the last like 10 minutes of the game. They just weren't able to score one goal that would put them in front. I did unfortunately tip Gold Coast in a bit of an upset win. However, they only lost it by 2 points, so not the worst tip. Now we move on to the round 16 tips for this week. Start off on the Thursday night between the Brisbane Lions and the Western Bulldogs. And Brisbane have just claimed the Gabba to be their fortress. I feel like any team that travels up to Brisbane to face Brisbane at the Gabba, it's a really difficult task. I will be tipping the Brisbane Lions in this one. Brisbane sitting 3rd on the ladder, the Bulldogs sitting 8th on the ladder, and the Bulldogs probably have a little bit better form actually. They've won 3 out of their last 4 games that they've played in, and Brisbane have only won 2 out of their last 4. But at the Gabba, it's really hard to beat Brisbane, so I'm going to be tipping Brisbane, and this could be a really big win. I feel like it could be a really big win, but you never know, because the Dogs are just that side that can turn up if they want to. But I feel like at the Gabba, it's going to be really difficult. It's going to be close though. I feel like it's going to be closer than what they think. I'm going to say 11 points, Brisbane win. I feel like it's going to be closer than what everyone is going to think. The Dogs will bring up the fight against the Brisbane Lions. However, Brisbane at home, I feel like they're just too easy. I feel like Brisbane will lead for the majority of the game and get it done by 11 points. Moving on to the Friday game now at Marvel Stadium, we have Carlton and St Kilda. Now this is huge. I'm pretty sure the Saints season is over. They've lost their past 3 games in a row, which is appalling, really appalling. Just a second ago, I remember them competing in the top 4 against the Dockers and teams like Brisbane, Geelong in the top 4. They were sitting like similar to where Freo are standing at the moment, and I didn't know how much they actually dropped off until yesterday I looked at the ladder. I thought they were still 6th or 7th on the table, but they've dropped down to 10th now. They are past Richmond, they're past the Dogs, they're past Collingwood, and I just remember, felt like just a week ago they were still in the top 4 competing with teams like Freo. But yeah, no, the Saints have dropped off a huge amount. I thought they were going to be the team that were staying in the ranks of Freo, Brisbane, those teams in the top 4, but they've dropped off horribly. 3 losses in a row, and their percentage is just dropping every week. And the Blues coming off a comfortable win against the Dockers, controlling the game pretty much since the second quarter onwards. Sitting 5th on the table, I feel like this could be either a flogging win or an upset win for the Saints. I feel like Carlton, they sometimes can't show up on a game like a Friday night footy. However, I will have to lean towards Carlton just based on the current form. However, I can definitely see St Kilda actually winning this game. I'll be tipping the Blues to get this done. A margin is a little bit difficult to think of. I'm going to say Carlton get it done by 21 points. The Blues will dominate, but the margin will make it look like it's been a close game. However, Carlton will just control the footy and they'll dominate the Saints. Moving on to the Saturday games now, 1:45 PM MCG, we have the Bombers taking on the Swans. Majority of the past games that they've played, these two sides, it's been rippers. Obviously, they've played before this season, and in Sydney, it was just a comfortable win for the Swans. They flogged it by over 50 points. Sydney sitting 6th, and the Bombers sitting 16th. They're coming off a loss against West Coast, and if they can lose against West Coast, they can lose against any team in the league. And at the G, I feel like the Swans perform well there. I'll be tipping the Swans to get it done, 44-point margin. However, I just don't see it going the way of the Bombers. I feel like Sydney play a better brand of footy at the MCG than Essendon do. You never know. It's a game of footy. Absolutely anyone can win, no matter what the odds say, no matter what the lineups are. Anyone can win a game of footy, but I feel like this one just heavily favouring the Swans. 4:35 PM at Adelaide Oval, we have Adelaide taking on Melbourne. Now, this could genuinely be an interesting game, and I'm tempted to tip Adelaide because I feel like they're ready for the fight. They are a team that can beat Melbourne, and especially with the past form that Melbourne have been in over the past 4 weeks, 5 weeks, this could be an Adelaide win. With their home ground advantage, I know Melbourne are coming off a comfortable win against Brisbane at the MCG, but travelling to Adelaide definitely have the guts to do it. And a lot of times where I've tipped upsets in the past few weeks that I haven't just been doing great in my tipping, they've just been all wrong, and the upsets are really costing me at the moment. However, you've got to risk it to get the biscuit, haven't you? I'm going to go Adelaide to get it done. I'm going to say 9 points Adelaide win. They did it last year against Melbourne to break their streak at Adelaide Oval as well. I feel like Adelaide wins 9 points, but might have to change this tip during the week. Next up, Saturday night footy at GMHBA, we have the Cats taking on North Melbourne. This is going to be an absolute shocker of a game for the Kangaroos. I feel like Geelong sitting second on the table, and they're just winning games left, right and centre. They haven't lost one, I think, since the Freo game, or somewhere close to there. They haven't lost for a while. And the Kangaroos, well, they've only picked up one win this year, and that was against West Coast at Marvel Stadium. Also, this is going to be a really hard game for the Roos to win, and it's going to be a really hard game for the Cats to drop. I'm going to be tipping Geelong. Obvious decision. I would really love to tip a 100-point margin, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I feel like it's going to be a pretty low-scoring game. However, Geelong, will just dominate. I feel like final scores will both be under 100, but Geelong will just flog them. I feel like I'll go a 65-point margin, and Geelong just on top for the whole game. Moving on to the next game, we have Gold Coast and Collingwood at METRICON Stadium. Considering that the Suns have been in some pretty respectable form, and Collingwood are just cruising at the moment, sitting 7th on the table, they haven't lost in a minute. But at METRICON Stadium, this game is going to be a genuine challenge. Now, this game is being broadcasted on Channel 7 over the Geelong game, so I feel like this one, it's going to be a blockbuster. The Suns and the Pies both in pretty similar patches based on the 2022 form. They're both performing really well, much better than most people expected at the start of the year as well. Collingwood played decent at METRICON Stadium. I feel like Collingwood can play well at pretty much every venue in Australia, and considering the form, I don't know. I feel like I'm leaning towards the Pies, but at METRICON Stadium, the Suns can be a whole different team. Gold Coast coming off a respectable 2-point loss against Port in Adelaide. That's impressive to compete against Port and only lose by 2 points across the other side of Australia as well. Still leaning towards the Pies based on their form, and they're just playing spectacular footy at the moment. I'm going to tip Collingwood to get it done. I'm going to say 15-point game. However, I think this one can be a really good game. This is going to be a ripper to watch. Moving on to the Sunday games now, we head to the MCG to see Richmond take on the West Coast Eagles. And straight away, I will be tipping Richmond to get it done. West Coast just don't perform too well at the MCG, and I feel like Richmond gets it done. Richmond coming off the loss against Geelong, and a really tight game as well that. So if they're competing against Geelong at the MCG, West Coast, geez, they're going to get absolutely hammered. And so Richmond get it done comfortably, 40-point margin on the dot, and West Coast just, they're coming off a win against Essendon, but Richmond are playing decent footy. They are looking like a possible top 8 contender this year, so I'll be tipping Richmond to get it done. Second last game of the round, we have GWS and Hawthorn at Giant Stadium, 3:20 PM bounce down, and this one could be a real good game as well. I'll be leaning towards GWS just because of the home ground advantage, but every time GWS have seemed to play at their home ground, I've said based on home ground advantage, I'll be tipping GWS, and they've lost pretty much every single time. So both sides are in pretty similar boats. They're just both sitting in horrible positions on the ladder, 14th and 15th. I'm going to be tipping Hawthorn. I feel like GWS actually just don't play a good brand of footy at their home venue, and I feel like Hawthorn are going to get the job done. Hawthorn to get it done by a 31-point margin, and I feel like they're just going to dominate the Giants from the get-go. Last game of the round, we have Fremantle and Port Adelaide at Optus Stadium. Freo sitting still in the top 4 after a loss against Carlton, and Port sitting 12th with some pretty decent form. They started off the season, I think it was 0-4, 0-5, and since then they've only lost, I think, 2 games. Coming off a win against Gold Coast at Adelaide Oval, and Freo coming off a loss against the Blues at Marvel Stadium. Based on home ground advantage, and I never tip against my team, I'll be tipping Freo to get it done. We usually play around this time, same day, Sunday, last game of the round, so we should be used to the conditions, used to the time slot. I feel like there's not much excuse here versus Port Adelaide, who have been a bit of an up and down side this year, and at our home venue, we should be able to get it done. I don't think it's going to be that big of a margin, unfortunately. I would love a big percentage booster. We've dropped down percentage heaps as well. We're at 150 a few weeks ago, and now we've dropped down to 122. So, hoping for a percentage booster. 17 points will be the final margin, and I'm just really hoping for a bigger margin than that. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's getting towards the end of the year, so stay tuned for a mid-season predictions video, which should be out tomorrow by the time that you are seeing this. Leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in my next video.